The Galactic Empire's envoy towered over the gathering of Earth's representatives, his gold-plated armor glinting under the artificial light of the United Nations Assembly Chamber. He spoke with a voice that seemed amplified, not by technology, but by the weight of centuries of unchallenged dominance. His name was Praetor Vorkith, and his presence alone was enough to make seasoned diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Humans," Vorkith began, his tone dripping with disdain, "you are but whispers in the void, a species too timid to expand, too meek to conquer, and too soft to matter. The Empire demands a demonstration of your worth, or we will take this planet and crush you beneath our boots." The room fell into silence, broken only by the quiet murmur of translators conveying the insult in dozens of languages. President Eleanor Gray of Earth stood, her expression calm, but her hands clenched at her sides. "We are not cowards," she replied firmly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We value diplomacy and cooperation. Violence is not our first choice." Vorkith laughed, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the chamber. A predictable answer from a species that hides behind words. "We do not seek dialogue. Prove your strength or accept your place as subjects of the Empire." As Vorkith turned to leave, the room erupted into chaos. Representatives from Earth's nations argued among themselves, some calling for negotiation, others for retaliation. In the midst of the commotion, a single figure remained silent at the edge of the room, observing the proceedings with sharp, calculating eyes. Colonel Marcus Kane had seen more battles than he cared to remember. His grizzled features bore the scars of wars fought in the shadows, where victories were measured in whispers and terror rather than body counts. He was a man who thrived in the unlit corners of conflict, where rules were bent and survival was the only metric of success. After the assembly adjourned, Kane was summoned to a private meeting with President Gray and her closest advisors. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with the weight of an impending decision. "Colonel," Gray began, her voice low, "you've read the reports. The Empire is powerful, too powerful for a direct confrontation. But we can't let this challenge go unanswered." Kane leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze fixed on the president. "You want to send a message," he said, more a statement than a question. Gray nodded. "Not just any message. A message they'll never forget." For a moment, the room was silent, the gravity of the situation settling over everyone present. Then Kane spoke, his voice like gravel. "If you want fear, you call the Boogeymen." The room seemed to grow colder at the mention of the name. The Boogeymen were a ghost story, even within Earth's military circles. A clandestine unit so secretive that most of their operations existed only as rumors. They were the monsters humans unleashed when diplomacy and conventional warfare failed. Gray's expression hardened. "Are they ready?" "They're always ready," Kane replied. "But you need to understand, this isn't about meeting strength with strength. It's about breaking the Empire without ever letting them see what hit them." Gray considered this for a long moment before giving a single nod. "Do it." 2 days later, Kane stood in the dimly lit command center of a secure facility buried miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, a group of individuals prepared for a mission unlike any they had undertaken before. There was Samantha Ghost Reyes, an expert in infiltration and stealth, her movements as silent and precise as a predator stalking its prey. Beside her stood David Echo Grant, a master of psychological warfare whose calm demeanor belied the chaos he could unleash with a well-placed word or a subtle manipulation. Rounding out the team was Alexei Spectre Volkov, a towering figure whose mastery of technology and explosives made him as dangerous behind a keyboard as he was on the battlefield. Kane addressed them with the brevity of a man who knew the value of time. "The Empire thinks we're weak. Your mission is to prove them wrong. Not with brute force, but with fear. We're going to make them question everything they think they know about humanity." Ghost smirked, her eyes glinting with anticipation. About time someone knocked them off their pedestal. Echo adjusted his gloves, his voice as smooth as silk. "They built their empire on fear. Let's see how they like being on the other end of it." Spectre simply nodded, his silence more telling than words. Kane's gaze swept over the team, pride and resolve mingling in his expression. You're not just soldiers. You're the embodiment of everything they fear humans could become. Make them remember why they should have left us alone. As the team boarded the stealth shuttle that would carry them to the heart of the Empire, Kane watched them go with a mixture of confidence and unease. The Boogeymen were humanity's best shot at turning the tide, but the stakes had never been higher. In the stillness of the command center, he muttered to himself, "Let's see how brave they are when the dark starts looking back." And so, humanity's response began, not with the roar of armies, but with the silent approach of shadows, carrying the weight of an entire planet's resolve. The shuttle hummed softly as it cut through the void, cloaked in layers of advanced technology that rendered it invisible to the Empire's scanners. Inside, the Boogeymen prepared in silence, each absorbed in their own ritual before the storm they were about to unleash. Samantha Reyes, codenamed Ghost, sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed and her breathing steady. She traced the edge of her knife with a gloved finger, a ritual she had repeated before every mission since her first deployment. It wasn't superstition, it was focus. The weapon in her hand was an extension of herself, and like her, it had to be sharp and precise. Across from her, David Echo Grant leaned back in his seat, a small tablet in his hands. He swiped through pages of data, memorizing key phrases and cultural nuances of the Empire's various factions. Words, he knew, could cut deeper than blades if wielded correctly. He smirked as he read an imperial proverb. Strength knows no shadow. He couldn't wait to prove them wrong. Alexei Spectre Volkov sat at the terminal, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he ran simulations and checked their equipment. His hulking frame seemed out of place among the delicate wires and circuits, but his hands moved with the finesse of a concert pianist. The Empire relied heavily on automated systems, and Alexei's job was to turn those systems against them. Colonel Marcus Kane watched his team from the corner of the cabin, arms crossed and expression unreadable. He had handpicked each of them, not just for their skills, but for their ability to think beyond the parameters of conventional warfare. The Boogeymen weren't soldiers. They were weapons, crafted to exploit fear and uncertainty. The shuttle's pilot, an AI affectionately named Whisper, interrupted the quiet. Approaching target zone. Estimated time to insertion. 15 minutes. Kane stepped forward, his voice cutting through the low hum of the engines. All right, listen up. You've all read the brief. Our first objective is to make them believe they're being hunted by something beyond their comprehension. No direct engagements unless absolutely necessary. This is about precision, not brute force. Ghost opened her eyes, slipping her knife into its sheath. And when they start running, we make sure they don't stop, Kane replied. Echo leaned forward, his voice casual but tinged with excitement. This is their stronghold planet, right? Their crown jewel. If we shake this place, the ripples will be felt across the entire Empire. That's the idea, Kane said. We're not here to win a war. We're here to make them believe it's already lost. Spectre turned from his terminal, his deep voice steady. Their systems are primitive by our standards. I'll have their communications and surveillance in chaos within an hour of landing. Good, Kane said. But remember, this isn't just about technology or tactics. It's about fear. Fear spreads faster than any fleet, and it's a hell of a lot harder to kill. The shuttle shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere, the cloaking systems compensating for the sudden increase in heat and pressure. Whisper's voice came through again. Landing zone secured. Disembark in 2 minutes. Kane nodded and turned to his team. You've trained for this. You know the stakes. Let's remind the galaxy who we are. The shuttle touched down in a clearing deep within a forest, far from any Imperial settlements or patrols. The team moved quickly and efficiently, their black armor blending seamlessly with the shadows. Ghost took point, her movements almost too fluid to be human. Echo followed, his sharp eyes scanning for anything out of place. Spectre brought up the rear, a small drone hovering over his shoulder as he monitored their surroundings. They reached the edge of a sprawling city, its towering spires glinting under the light of the planet's 3 moons. The city was a testament to the Empire's wealth and arrogance, its architecture grand but cold. Ghost crouched behind a rock, her voice barely a whisper over the comms. "Spectre, what's the play?" Spectre tapped a few keys on his wrist-mounted console. "I've mapped their surveillance network. Give me 10 minutes, and they won't know which way is up." "Make it 5, Kane ordered. Spectre smirked. "Done." As Spectre worked, Ghost and Echo scouted ahead, placing small devices in key locations around the city. Each device was designed to create the illusion of movement and sound, amplifying the natural paranoia of anyone who encountered it. Echo paused at the base of a massive statue depicting an Imperial war hero. He pulled out a canister of spray paint and scrawled a single word in the Empire's language across the pedestal. "Run." Ghost raised an eyebrow. "Subtle. They'll get the message," Echo replied, his grin hidden behind his helmet. Within minutes, the city was in chaos. Power grids flickered, communications were disrupted, and shadowy figures seemed to appear and disappear in the periphery of every security feed. Guards shouted orders, their voices tinged with panic, as they tried to secure a threat they couldn't see. Spectre's voice came through the comms. "They're scrambling. I've fed their systems enough false data to make them think an entire army is closing in." "Good," Kane said. "Keep them guessing." Ghost Echo. Time to escalate. The two moved deeper into the city, their movements synchronized and precise. They left no trace of their presence, only the growing sense that something was watching, waiting. By the time the team regrouped at their extraction point, the city was a tinderbox of fear and confusion. Kane looked at his team, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "Phase 1 complete," he said. "The Empire thinks they're hunting shadows. Let's make sure those shadows haunt them for a long time." As the shuttle lifted off, the Boogeymen vanished into the night, leaving behind a city on the brink of collapse and a galaxy about to realize the true cost of underestimating humanity. The imperial capital city of Erythian shimmered beneath its protective dome, a beacon of the Galactic Empire's power and grandeur. Inside its sprawling metropolis, life moved with precision and purpose, every citizen playing their assigned role. The streets were immaculate, the air filtered to perfection, and the towering spires of administration stood as monuments to the Empire's unyielding dominance. It was perfect, too perfect. The first sign that something was wrong came at dawn, though no one recognized it for what it was. A low-frequency hum resonated through the capital, so faint that it was more a sensation than a sound. Residents paused, puzzled, some glancing at their neighbors as though seeking confirmation of the disturbance. But the hum faded as quickly as it had come, leaving an unease that no one could quite place. In the command center of Erythian's planetary defense grid, Commander Lorthes paced before a massive display screen. He was a man of precision, his uniform immaculate and his demeanor rigid. He had built his career on efficiency and control, yet something about the reports trickling in from the outer sectors of the Empire had unsettled him. Whispers of chaos, of an unseen enemy striking without warning or mercy. "Status report," he barked, his voice sharp enough to make his subordinates straighten in their seats. "Surveillance systems are operational," one officer replied. "No anomalies detected within the capital." Lorthes frowned. "Double the patrols. If there's something out there, I want to know about it before it becomes a problem." Unbeknownst to Lorthes, the problem was already inside the dome. Ghost moved like liquid shadow through the labyrinthine corridors of the city's underbelly, her presence a ripple in the darkness. She paused to plant a small device on the support column of an energy conduit, her hands deft and precise. The device emitted a soft click, then went silent, its purpose dormant for now. "Conduit compromised," she whispered into her comms. Moving to the next target, Echo's voice crackled in her ear. "Good? Spectre's about to play his part. The locals are already on edge." Spectre, positioned in a concealed alcove near the city's central communication tower, was a picture of focus. His portable console displayed streams of Imperial code, each line manipulated and rewritten with surgical precision. He tapped a command, and suddenly, Every holoscreen in Erythian flickered to life, displaying the same cryptic message: they are coming. Panic rippled through the city like a shockwave. Citizens stopped in their tracks, their eyes wide as they stared at the ominous words. The Empire's propaganda had long painted humans as weak and insignificant, but the sheer audacity of this act, breaching the heart of their most secure city, challenged that narrative in an instant. Security teams are responding, Spectre reported calmly. They're spreading themselves thin, trying to secure every major installation. Just like we planned, Kane's voice came through the comms, steady and authoritative. Keep them guessing. Ghost Echo, start Phase 2. Ghost and Echo rendezvoused in the shadow of a towering administrative building, its sleek surface gleaming in the artificial sunlight. They moved with synchronized precision, planting devices that would emit sound bursts and holographic projections designed to disorient and terrify. As they worked, the air grew thick with tension. Echo glanced at Ghost, his usually calm demeanor tinged with unease. They're going to respond harder and faster if we push too much. That's the point, Ghost replied without missing a beat. They're strong because they're controlled. Break that control, and they'll fall apart. By nightfall, Erythian was a city on the brink. The hum returned, louder this time, resonating through the streets like the growl of an unseen predator. Lights flickered erratically, and the once pristine order of the capital began to unravel. Patrols moved in erratic patterns, their cohesion shattered by the relentless attacks on their systems and the growing fear in their ranks. In the Imperial Palace, Praetor Vorkith stood before a council of military leaders, his expression a mix of rage and disbelief. "This is unacceptable," he thundered. "We are the Empire. No force in the galaxy can challenge us, least of all these humans." One of the generals, his face pale, spoke hesitantly. "Praetor, this is no ordinary attack. They strike where we are strongest, our confidence, our control. They make us fight phantoms while our people lose faith." Vorkith slammed his fist on the table. "Then find these phantoms and crush them. Deploy the legionnaires to the city. If the humans are here, we will smoke them out." The order was relayed, and soon the streets of Erythian were swarming with Imperial soldiers clad in gleaming armor, their weapons at the ready. The Empire's most elite forces had been unleashed, but they found only silence and shadows. Ghost watched from a concealed perch high above the city, her keen eyes tracking the movements of the legionnaires. "They've committed their heavy hitters," she whispered. "They're scared." Echo, positioned a few blocks away, chuckled softly. "Good. Fear makes them predictable." As midnight approached, the final blow was delivered. The devices planted throughout the city activated simultaneously, flooding the streets with disorienting lights and sounds. Holographic figures appeared in the shadows, flickering and shifting, their forms just human enough to be recognizable, but distorted enough to unnerve. Spectre's voice came through the comms. "They're falling apart. Their chain of command is breaking down. This is it." Kane's voice followed, calm and decisive. "Pull back. We've done what we came to do." The Boogeymen vanished as quickly as they had come, leaving Erythian in chaos. The city's once immaculate order was gone, replaced by confusion, fear, and the realization that the Empire was not untouchable. In the silence of the shuttle as they escaped the planet, Kane looked at his team, his expression unreadable. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The Empire thinks they know fear. We're going to teach them they've only scratched the surface." The Boogeymen exchanged glances, their faces grim but resolute. They had struck the first blow, but the War of Shadows was far from over. The Imperial Command vessel Eternal Dominion hung in orbit above Erythian like a watchful predator. A monolithic structure of steel and firepower, it was the pride of the Empire's fleet, bristling with weaponry and staffed by the best minds and warriors the galaxy could offer. On its bridge, Praetor Vorkith paced before a massive tactical display, his eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding below. The situation in the capital had deteriorated further. Reports streamed in from beleaguered officers, their voices taut with fear and confusion. Power outages, sabotaged defenses, and ghostly figures in the shadows had reduced the once proud city to a trembling husk. Vorkith's teeth clenched as he listened. "They're just humans," he growled, turning to his chief strategist, Admiral Cauldron. "Explain to me how a species of cowards and diplomats has brought the heart of the Empire to its knees." Cauldron, a wiry man with an analytical mind, hesitated before replying. "Praetor, they're not engaging us directly. Their tactics rely on subterfuge, psychological warfare, and precision strikes. They've weaponized our arrogance against us." Vorkith slammed his fist onto the console, his golden gauntlet denting the metal. "Arrogance? We are the Empire. We do not cower in the face of shadows. If they wish to fight like cowards, then we will drown them in overwhelming force." Cauldron's expression flickered, a subtle unease crossing his features. "Praetor, with respect, deploying brute force may play into their hands. They want us to overextend, to expend our resources chasing phantoms." Vorkith's glare was as sharp as a blade. "I will not sit idle while they mock us. Send a fleet to Earth. If they wish to haunt us from the shadows, we will burn their planet to ash and scatter the survivors to the stars." As the praetor barked orders, none of the officers noticed the faint flicker of an unauthorized signal threading its way through the Dominion's communication channels. Spectre, miles away aboard a cloaked shuttle, watched his console with a grim smile. "They've taken the bait," he muttered. Ghost's voice came through the comms, calm and steady. "What's their move?" "Vorkith is sending a fleet to Earth," Spectre replied. "He's rattled, desperate to reassert control." Kane, seated beside Spectre, leaned forward. "Good. That gives us an opening. What about the Dominion?" Spectre's fingers danced across his keyboard, pulling up schematics and security feeds. "Locked down tight. But there's a vulnerability in their central AI core. If we can access it, we can take control of their entire fleet." "Too risky," Ghost interjected. "If they catch us, we'll be pinned in the middle of their flagship." Kane's gaze didn't waver. "We don't need to stay long. We just need to plant a seed." Echo's voice chimed in, laced with amusement. "You mean a seed that detonates, right?" Kane allowed himself a small smirk. "Precisely." Minutes later, the Boogeymen infiltrated the Dominion under the cover of its own maintenance schedule. Ghost led the way, her movements fluid and silent as she bypassed security patrols and surveillance cameras. The interior of the ship was a maze of steel corridors, each one humming with the energy of a war machine at its peak. Spectre remained at the rear, his console strapped to his arm as he hacked into the Dominion systems, creating false readings and redirecting guards away from their path. Echo walked beside him, a small device in hand that emitted a faint pulse, scrambling nearby sensors. They reached the AI core without incident, its cylindrical structure glowing faintly with a blue light. Spectre approached it with reverence, his fingers brushing the surface as he found the access panel. "Give me 5 minutes," he said, already plugging in his console. "Make it 3, Kane ordered, his eyes scanning the corridor for any signs of movement. As Spectre worked, Echo planted a small explosive device on the core's power relay. Its timer blinked red, set to detonate precisely 3 hours later. Ghost stood watch, her sharp eyes fixed on the corridor ahead. She felt the tension in the air, a predator's instinct warning her that they were running out of time. "We've overstayed our welcome," she muttered. Spectre finished his work, a triumphant smile tugging at his lips. "Done. The Dominion's fleet is ours to manipulate. When the relay goes, their systems will plunge into chaos." Kane nodded. "Let's move." They retraced their steps, their movements swift and precise. But as they neared the shuttle bay, an alarm blared, its shrill tone slicing through the air like a blade. "They found us," Ghost hissed, her grip tightening on her rifle. Imperial guards flooded the corridors, their golden armor glinting in the harsh light. Kane raised his weapon, his voice calm despite the urgency. "Engage only if necessary. Keep moving." The Boogeymen moved as one, their training and instincts turning the chaos into a deadly dance. Ghost took point, her shots precise and lethal, while Echo and Spectre provided cover, using the environment to their advantage. They reached the shuttle bay, the sleek, cloaked vessel waiting for them like a beacon of hope. Kane ushered the team aboard, his sharp eyes ensuring no one was left behind. As the shuttle lifted off, Kane watched the Dominion shrink in the distance. The explosive would detonate soon, crippling the flagship and sowing further chaos within the Empire's ranks. Back aboard the shuttle, Ghost removed her helmet, her expression grim. "We got what we came for, but they're going to tighten security now. We won't get another shot like this." "We won't need one," Kane replied, his tone resolute. "The Empire's pride is their greatest weakness. They'll chase us into the dark, and when they do, they'll find nothing but their own fear staring back at them." The team fell into a thoughtful silence, each member reflecting on the battles yet to come. They had struck another blow, but the war was far from over. In the distance, the stars gleamed cold and unfeeling, a reminder that the galaxy's shadows still held secrets waiting to be revealed. The darkness of deep space was absolute, a void so profound that even starlight seemed reluctant to pierce it. Floating in this emptiness was a lone vessel, the Phantom Veil, a stealth craft designed for missions no one could know existed. Inside, the Boogeymen regrouped, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of tactical displays and the rhythmic pulse of the ship's engines. Kane stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on a holographic map of the Empire's expanding territories. Red markers indicated planets and stations already under Imperial control, a vast sea of dominion that left little room for resistance. But at the edges of the map, faint blue lights pulsed, a signal from Earth's scattered allies, tenuous and fragile, but alive. "We can't outrun them forever," Ghost said, breaking the silence. She sat cross-legged at the table, her posture deceptively relaxed. "They've tasted fear, but they won't let that linger. They'll adapt. They'll overreact first," Spectre countered, his fingers dancing across a console as he monitored intercepted Imperial communications. "Vorkatha's pride won't allow anything less than a show of overwhelming force. That's where we have the advantage. Precision over arrogance." Echo leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "Precision only works if we keep our targets ahead of their moves. We've been lucky so far, but luck runs dry." Kane turned to face them, his expression calm yet resolute. "Luck didn't get us this far. Strategy did. Discipline. Unity. And that's what will carry us through." His gaze swept across the team, lingering on each member. "They've sent a fleet to Earth. It's a trap, one they're expecting to spring on us. But it's also an opportunity." Ghost raised an eyebrow. "An opportunity to do what?" "Die in a blaze of glory. To shatter their illusion of invincibility," Kane replied. "If we can disrupt their fleet's coordination and turn their strength against them, we can give Earth a fighting chance. It won't win the war, but it'll prove the Empire can bleed." Spectre nodded slowly, his mind already racing through the possibilities. "Their fleet relies on centralized command structures. If we can infiltrate their flagship again, we could plant false orders, sow confusion among their ranks." Echo frowned. "And get caught in the crossfire when they realize what's happening. That's why we won't do it alone," Kane said, activating the holographic map. Blue and green dots appeared alongside Earth's signal, resistance cells scattered across Imperial space. "We've made contact with other groups, each fighting their own battles in the shadows. If we coordinate, we can force the Empire to spread itself thin. The fleet heading to Earth will be vulnerable." Ghost leaned forward, studying the map. "It's ambitious, dangerous, but it might work." Spectre's console beeped, drawing his attention. He frowned as he read the data. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Eternal Dominion. They're moving faster than we thought. ETA to Earth is less than 2 days." Kane's jaw tightened. "Then we move now. Spectre, send the signal to our allies. Coordinate their strikes to coincide with ours." "On it," Spectre said, his fingers flying across the keys. The team sprang into action, each member preparing for the mission ahead. Ghost checked her weaponry, the precision tools of her trade gleaming in the dim light. Echo reviewed the ship's inventory, ensuring they had enough supplies for the journey and the battle to come. As the Phantom Veil approached the outer edges of the fleet's trajectory, tension filled the air. The team knew the risks. They were heading straight into the heart of the Empire's power, a move that bordered on madness. But it was also their best chance to strike a blow that would resonate across the galaxy. The ship's cloaking systems engaged as they neared the fleet, rendering them invisible to Imperial scanners. Spectre guided them through the labyrinth of ships, his focus unbroken. Their comms are active. They're coordinating maneuvers for orbital dominance over Earth. If we disrupt their chain of command now, they'll be scrambling when the resistance strikes. Kane stood beside him, his voice steady. What's our insertion point? The Dominion's secondary hangar, Spectre replied. It's lightly guarded but close to their comms relay hub. If we can disable that, it'll throw the fleet into disarray. The team prepared for the breach, their movements silent and deliberate. Ghost secured her gear, her eyes meeting Kane's. If this goes sideways, we won't have time for a retreat. Kane nodded. Then we make sure it doesn't. The shuttle detached from the Phantom Veil, its engines silent as it drifted toward the Dominion. Inside, the Boogeymen sat in tense silence, their breathing controlled, their focus absolute. The hangar came into view, a cavernous space filled with Imperial fighters and maintenance crews. Spectre bypassed the docking protocols, slipping the shuttle into a blind spot near a stack of cargo containers. The team disembarked swiftly, melting into the shadows. Ghost led the way, her movements fluid and purposeful. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors with practiced ease, Spectre feeding them real-time updates on patrol patterns and security measures. As they approached the comms relay hub, an alarm suddenly blared. Spectre swore under his breath, his console flashing red. They've detected a breach, must have tripped a failsafe. Kane's voice cut through the rising tension. We stick to the plan? Ghost, Echo, secure the relay. Spectre, and I will handle the overrides. The team split, their actions synchronized despite the escalating danger. Ghost and Echo moved like phantoms, neutralizing guards with silent precision. Meanwhile, Kane and Spectre reached the relay's control room, its walls lined with glowing consoles and data terminals. Spectre began his work, his fingers flying over the controls. Give me 2 minutes. Kane positioned himself by the door, his weapon at the ready. Make it 1. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, the heavy boots of Imperial soldiers closing in. Ghost's voice came through the comms, tense but controlled. We got company. A lot of it. Spectre's console beeped, and he exhaled sharply. Done. The relay's disabled. Their fleet won't be able to coordinate effectively. Kane nodded. Good. Let's move. The team regrouped, their escape route compromised but their mission complete. As they fought their way back to the shuttle, the chaos they had sown began to take effect. Imperial ships broke formation, their movements erratic as conflicting orders flooded their systems. The Boogeymen boarded the shuttle, the engines roaring to life as they blasted away from the Dominion. Behind them, the Empire's fleet fell into disarray, their once impenetrable unity shattered. Kane watched the chaos unfold on the display, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. This isn't just a battle, he said. It's the beginning of their end. The shuttle disappeared into the void, leaving the fractured Empire to grapple with a threat it had never truly understood. The Phantom Veil drifted through the cold expanse of space, its engines humming quietly as the Boogeymen regrouped in the ship's dimly lit command center. Earth's orbit loomed ahead, and the stars flickered beyond like distant, cold witnesses to a war yet to come. The fractured Imperial fleet was still in disarray, but Kane knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The Empire was nothing if not resilient, and they would soon find their footing. Kane stood by the viewport, his arms crossed, eyes narrowing as the swirling galaxies outside seemed to mirror his thoughts. The mission had been a success, but the true battle was far from over. Infiltrating the heart of the Empire had exposed their vulnerability, but now they had to ensure that vulnerability was exploited. Ghost entered, her expression unreadable as always, but her presence radiated something more. The resistance on Earth is mobilizing, she said. It won't be enough. Not without our help. Kane nodded, turning from the viewport. They don't have the coordination. They fight like they're still at the mercy of the Empire's laws. But they can learn. They'll have to. I don't like waiting, Ghost said, her tone low. We've done enough for them. We've made the Empire bleed. We've shown them what we can do. It's not enough to show them, Spectre replied, his voice low from the corner of the room where he'd been monitoring the comms. We need to make them afraid. Make them question everything. Echo, who had been silent until now, broke into a rare grin. Oh, we're getting there. They felt the pressure already. A fleet shattered, the Dominion on fire. They're questioning everything now. What we need is the right moment. Then we make it, Kane replied, his voice cold and certain. A sharp ping echoed from Spectre's console. His fingers moved quickly across the display, eyes scanning the new data. The Dominion is recovering faster than expected. They're coordinating a counteroffensive with reinforcements from the outer sectors. It's just a matter of time before they regroup and retaliate in full force. Kane's jaw tightened, but his mind was already calculating. We don't have much time, but we do have enough. They won't be able to hit us if they can't find us. We'll turn their strength against them. Turn their strength against them? Echo asked, his brow furrowing. How? We make them think we're coming for Earth again, Kane said, his voice sharp with conviction. And then we strike their military heart. We cripple their war machine so completely they won't be able to react to anything we do. No more fleets, no more reinforcements. Ghost's eyes lit with understanding. You're going for their command centers. Exactly, Kane replied. The Imperial war machine is just a shadow without its leaders. If we eliminate the heads, the body falls. We strike their command centers, their communications hubs. We leave them blind and fractured. But we don't know where they are, Spectre pointed out, still tapping into Imperial networks. They keep everything on lockdown. Every ship, every station is cloaked under layers of encryption. That's why we're going in first, Kane said, turning to face him fully. We need to hit them before they even know we're coming. You'll find the weaknesses. You've done it before? Spectre nodded, his fingers already flying over the console. I can get us in, but it's going to take time to locate everything. They made sure no one knows their main hubs anymore. Their secrecy is their strength. Ghost grinned, which is exactly why secrecy is our weapon. Kane's expression hardened. We can't afford to waste any time. Find them. We'll give them a nightmare. The next few hours were a blur of calculations and preparations. Spectre dug into Imperial databases, running silent infiltrations and rerouting signals to expose the hidden locations of command centers, while Ghost prepped equipment and weapons for the strike. Echo maintained watch, monitoring any incoming threats from Imperial comms. Kane sat, unmoving, a figure of stillness amid the flurry of activity. He wasn't one to rush, but the weight of this moment pressed on him. If they were successful, the Empire would have no choice but to acknowledge the Boogeymen's existence. Not as ghosts to be hunted, but as a force that could tear apart everything the Empire had built. Finally, Spectre looked up, his expression grim. I've got it. Their central command, the node that connects all their fleets and military installations, it's in the Velos system. It's a backwater far from major shipping lanes. But it's the heart of their operations. We go now, Kane said. Prepare for extraction. Spectre, you're in charge of the infiltration. Echo, get the extraction routes mapped. Ghost, we're hitting them fast and hard. No mercy. The Phantom Veil shifted into hyperspace, its silent engines roaring to life as they made the jump. Kane, his focus unbroken, kept his eyes on the path ahead, the starlight flashing past them as they accelerated toward their target. Velos was a dead system, its planets withering in the shadow of an ancient red giant. The Empire had long since abandoned it for more lucrative conquests, leaving only a skeleton crew stationed there to maintain its function as a military nexus. It was here that the Boogeymen would deliver the final blow to the heart of the Empire's war machine. The shuttle detached from the Phantom Veil as it neared Velos, cloaking its engines as it descended through the system's quiet void. A small Imperial installation lay hidden within the system's debris fields, unmarked, unnoticed, and far too comfortable in its isolation. The infiltration was swift. Ghost, Echo, and Kane moved through the darkened hallways of the installation, their footsteps muffled by the sterile silence of the base. Spectre's voice came over their comms. guiding them through corridors and past guards, always one step ahead. When they reached the central command room, the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a darkened chamber, rows of consoles glowing faintly in the gloom. The heart of Imperial control, a place where decisions were made that shaped the galaxy. Kane nodded to Ghost, who moved first, her blade flashing in the dim light. The few guards in the room were no match for her speed. Echo followed, securing the perimeter. Spectre hacked into the central network, his fingers dancing across the terminal as he bypassed the encryption. "The node's almost ours," he said. "In a minute, this entire base is going to be compromised." And then, as if in answer, the alarm screamed to life. The Boogeymen had triggered the system's failsafe, and now the Empire knew their nightmare had begun. Kane turned to face his team, his eyes flashing with a cold fire. "We've come for their heart. Let's make sure they never forget it." With that, the phantom veil vanished back into the stars, leaving Velos burning behind them, a symbol of their victory and the beginning of the end for the Empire.